BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia at heart and from around the globe. And hello everybody, today is Friday, another Cooper Friday. Welcome to the show. How's everybody doing? Although I expect that some of you will be listening to this episode on Saturday morning, depending on your time zone. And I do apologize that last week a Cooper Friday episode did not come out, even though I had one planned, but everything went back to the drawing board because I had some time yesterday and I finally had the opportunity to sit down and listen to the 2 new episodes of the Cooper Vortex, which is hosted by Darren Schaefer. It is one of my favorite programs, and it's available on the podcast circuit, but of course it's also here on YouTube. And there are 2 episodes out. One of them is called D.B. Cooper Book Review Part 2, which features a guest named Nicole Legg, and they're discussing various books that were written about D.B. Cooper. And there was another one that was called D.B. Cooper Was My Dad, and it featured a guest named James Lane. And I'm going to be discussing some of his observations, as well as a book that he has written about the case, which is a combination of, I guess you would say, creative nonfiction, as well as an attempt to perhaps identify D.B. Cooper. On November 24th of 1971, a man boarded a plane going from Portland to Seattle. He handed a note to the flight attendant saying that he had a bomb, and he opened a briefcase that he was carrying, and he revealed the contents of that briefcase, and indeed, there was what appeared to have been a bomb. He held everyone on the plane hostage, and the 36-minute flight from Portland to Seattle turned into an over 2-hour excursion. And then, once they landed in Seattle, D.B. Cooper successfully obtained the parachutes and money that he had requested. The plane then took off, heading toward Reno, Nevada, and at some time during the night, D.B. Cooper parachuted out into the clouds, into the rain, and was never seen or heard from again. Although some people believe that they have identified D.B. Cooper, and with an individual like James Lane, he's going to zone in on his own father, Fred Milton Lane, and I think that this is perhaps a possibility that he is exploring, as opposed to somebody who is just gung-ho, 100% certain that they've identified D.B. Cooper, and I think that he's presenting this as some type of investigative journey that he has done, as opposed to just saying that, oh, I know the truth and no one else does. So I find that that is actually a much easier narrative to digest, as opposed to someone who just says that, oh yeah, I know everything and you don't. That's a little bit more difficult for us to comprehend. But as far as the suspect that he is proposing, Fred Milton Lane, let's look at some of the background info, and let's also look at some of the challenges. And I do have one final introductory note, and that is that if this was going to be a type of advertisement or promotional episode or a puff piece or something to generate interest in his book, The Trail to D.B. Cooper, it worked. I was like, absolutely, I have to read this book. And a lot of you guys know that I do the segments about the Zodiac Killer, and I just went through a 400-page book called Zodiac Letters, Edward Wayne Edwards, and did a response to that yesterday. That's why Cooper Friday is coming out at night, because yesterday's episode came out at night, and the timetables are a little bit off. I like to upload in the morning. And I saw that this book was 40 pages, maybe 45, depending on your device. And I was like, all right, you know what? Let's just go with this. I was really curious about what he had to say. It definitely got me interested in his story. And I listen to a lot of episodes of the Cooper Vortex, and I don't always have that response. In fact, some of the authors and people who are promoting books really put me off, if I can be very frank, especially the ones who are pushing a suspect like Walter Recca. There have been multiple books written about Walter Recca as a D.B. Cooper suspect, and he's somebody whom I think absolutely was not D.B. Cooper. And I don't even comprehend this overwhelming fascination that people have with Walter Recca. But with a suspect like Fred Milton Lane, this is all new territory. I'm not going to lie to you guys. Before 2 days ago, I had no idea who he was. Before last week, I had no idea who James Lane was. So let's go through some of the points that were discussed in the book The Trail to D.B. Cooper, as well as on the Cooper Vortex. Number 1, Fred Milton Lane was somebody who was 36 years old at the time of the D.B. Cooper skyjacking, which is not completely out of touch, not completely out of line. And they even discussed this on the show. And Darren Schaefer said that, yeah, that's a reasonable age for DB Cooper. And I've found different sources online that I've discussed with you guys on Cooper Friday where some people think that, oh, yes, DB Cooper was in his 50s. And another source that I found said DB Cooper was in his 40s. And my simple response is, wait a second, wait a second, wait a second. If this is an unsolved case, how do we truly know that DB Cooper was in his 50s or 40s? Yes, those are estimations. But I think we all know that there are some people who look a lot older. I've met multiple people in their 30s, in their mid-30s, that could have passed for 45 or 50, and I'm sure you have too. So I think 36 is well within the realm of possibility. Now, one thing that James Lane seemed very nervous about was that he was talking about how he thought that his father, Fred Milton Lane, might be too short to be D.B. Cooper, because there are estimations that D.B. Cooper was 6 feet tall. And I think that that is like, but again, an estimation. His father was 5 feet 10 inches tall, and I just have to play the same card. We don't truly know how tall D.B. Cooper was. We don't truly know how how long his arms were, how wide his shoulders were, and we have to bear in mind that for almost all of the time that people are actually paying attention to D.B. Cooper, he was sitting down in his seat on the plane. 5 feet 10, 6 feet tall, absolutely you could mistake those, or absolutely that's reasonable and within the realm of possibility. And sadly, there's only one photo of Fred Milton Lane that is provided in the book, The Trail to D.B. Cooper, and you can't really see too much about him. It would be so much better if it were just an up-close profile picture of Fred Milton Lane. But he's actually cutting a cake in the photo, and I think that there are some physical similarities. Another point is that he had hazel eyes, and it was reported that D.B. Cooper had brown eyes. Like if you were to look at the D.B. Cooper case the way that I did, as an absolute newcomer, you'll probably read that D.B. Cooper had brown eyes. And if you look at the composite sketches that were drawn of D.B. Cooper, yeah, it looks like he had brown eyes. But as we learned very early on, it's possibly brown eyes. D.B. Cooper possibly had brown eyes, because what a lot of people say is that if somebody had a different eye color, like let's say hazel, that could be easily mistaken for being brown. Whereas if somebody had bright blue eyes, that might be a little bit more challenging. And again, if somebody had, some type of very noticeable eye color, that might stand out a little bit more. But mistaking brown and hazel, again, is not out of the realm of possibility. And I think that, this is actually a suspect that I am willing to hear more about. I can't say that I would endorse or refute everything about this suspect. Instead, I would say that James Lane has piqued my curiosity. Some other points about Fred Milton Lane as a D.B. Cooper suspect is that he would have been very familiar with navigation, aviation, airplanes, and he would have learned all of this in a twofold way. He was ex-military, and he was a member of the Marine Corps and then the Coast Guard, and he was actually a pilot in the Marine Corps. And I don't want to say any more than that because I don't want to misstate any of these specific details. But if you read the book, The Trail to D.B. Cooper, they even do this type of recreation where he's talking about how he would have learned about all of the things that D.B. Cooper discusses on the plane. Keep the flaps down, fly at 10,000 feet, and don't go over 200 knots or whatever. And all these things are just laid out, showing about how he would have learned specific facts and pieces of information about airplanes. Now, some of the interesting points, though, about Fred Milton Lane that might set him apart from some other D.B. Cooper suspects is that he went to Alaska, actually, and he spent time in Ketchikan, Alaska, and he was very much into elk hunting. One thing that James Lane proposed in his observations and his, perhaps, hypothesis is he actually thinks that Fred Milton Lane was trying to go somewhere close to his mother's home, go elk hunting prior to the D.B. Cooper skyjacking, which would have been twofold. It would provide him an alibi, like, well, where were you on November 24th of 1971? Oh, I was elk hunting in Oregon or Washington State. And then it also would actually have been something that would have turned this into some type of enjoyable activity where he is just doing this partly for the thrill. But there was something else that stood out to me, and that is that there's a crystal clear motive about how and why he would have been able to do this. There's a crystal clear motive as to what would drive somebody like Fred Milton Lane to become D.B. Cooper, and that is that he was 6 years short of getting his military pension, and then it was canceled. He felt that he was robbed out of his military pension. He was denied it. And I mean, I'm not even going to act like I'm completely clear on all of the specifics, but that is what has been proposed by James Lane. He felt that he was cheated out of his military pension 6 years short of military retirement. So that's one thing. Then he talks about wanting to become a pilot with Northwest Orient, and then the airline Northwest Orient denies him because he actually had a type of personality disorder that he concealed from them for a while, but some way, somehow, that information was leaked out about his personality disorder, and then he was no longer able to work with Northwest Orient. They even said he made it too far in the interview process. And again, these conversations are recreated in the book, The Trail to D.B. Cooper, and you have to just kind of take it with a grain of salt and recognize that that part is creative nonfiction, trying to recreate conversations where James Lane couldn't have possibly been present. But you can see where this is going. There's a very clear motive about how and why this person would want to commit the D.B. Cooper skyjacking. One of the pieces of evidence that is discussed very frequently in the D.B. Cooper world is that there was a clip-on tie that was left behind. When D.B. Cooper boarded the plane, he was wearing a tie with a mother-of-pearl tie clip, and it was not a wraparound tie, it was a clip-on. D.B. Cooper removed it before the jump, and then he was able to just commit the jump without the need for a tie. But when the tie was put under an electron microscope, it was determined to have had over 100,000 rare metallic particles. And we were discussing this on one of the most recent D.B. Cooper episodes here on Black Box Online Radio, and you can hit the like button and subscribe if you want to follow along with D.B. Cooper episodes. And I was responding to a live stream that was done by Eric Eulis, where he was talking about one of the particles that was found on the tie was uranium and thorium. It contains uranium and thorium, and uranium would be a very bizarre thing for somebody to have on a tie. Now, it's my understanding that these particles came from the area around the knot when it was touched by D.B. Cooper when he was taking off the tie. But could this lead to some type of window into D.B. Cooper's world? Did he work for a place like Remcrew Titanium? Did he work for a different type of metallic related company? Did he work in the aviation industry? But when they talked about how there was uranium found on the tie, there was something that was shared on the Cooper Vortex. And James Lane stated that his father owned shares in a mine in Alaska that dealt with uranium. So these might not be things coming from the Boeing industry or Remcrew Titanium, Crucible Steel, but rather from the mining industry. Perhaps that would also be explaining why rare elements are put together, such as uranium and thorium, and so on. And again, I'm going to admit that I'm a newcomer to this, and I'm going to be open to correction. So if I misstate anything, I can always do a follow-up, and I would love to do something much more expansive on Fred Milton Lane as a D.B. Cooper suspect and the book The Trail to D.B. Cooper. And really, at this time, I'd also like to know, what do you guys think so far? Do you think that this person is a reasonable person of interest? Because I talk about other unsolved mysteries here on Black Box Online Radio. For example, the Zodiac Killer mystery and the Jack the Ripper mystery. And some people just hear the age and the height and the physical description. They're like, nope, wasn't him. Too young, too old, or perhaps, too short, too tall when we're talking about Zodiac suspects and Jack the Ripper suspects. But what do you really think about Fred Milton Lane so far? And you guys heard my stance. I am interested enough to keep exploring him. Not like what I said about Walter Recca, where it's like, no, absolutely not. This guy's just jerking people around, telling wild stories. And also about some other people who are just ordinary working men who seem to have some type of physical similarity to the D.B. Cooper composite sketches, so they get thrown into this. But please give your feedback in the comment section down below. And I also want to remind you guys about the new Black Box Online Radio channel membership that will be coming in March of 2025. And to all of you who want to follow the D.B. Cooper case, there will be a bonus episode about D.B. Cooper coming out on Fridays in addition to the regularly scheduled Cooper Friday, and it's going to be called The Cooper Profile. And this is something that you can access just by joining the channel membership, once again starting in March of 2025. And there are going to be bonus episodes made available here on Black Box Online Radio. Not only will you have the Cooper profile, which is going to talk about the psychological aspects of D.B. Cooper and skyjacking, but also the double event, which talks about Jack the Ripper. 2 episodes will be coming out on Ripper Wednesday, and you will get access to the Tuesday episode of True Crime Talk Radio in the Morning, which is a general true crime program that I do here on Black Box Online Radio, and that is going to be talking about criminology, psychology, and forensics, and pretty much anything under the sun or in the darkness. It's a live stream where I can interact with you guys. And the Thursday episodes of True Crime Talk Radio in the Morning will also be made available for free, but there is this channel membership that you can join if you want bonus content, and I'm definitely looking forward to it because it's also going to mean that Black Box Online Radio will finally be getting back to regularly scheduled programming. I've always intended this channel to put out daily segments for people to listen to. I mean, something that's going to help you out Monday through Friday during the business week, and maybe bonus episodes on the weekend. And if you guys want to talk about D.B. Cooper, that is absolutely fine by me. And I also just want to really make the bonus content things that are not associated with murders. Because with the Jack the Ripper episodes, I want to focus more on the stories associated with Jack the Ripper. But one thing with the Cooper profile, not only is it psychological as opposed to homicidal, D.B. Cooper didn't murder anyone. And if you read the book, The Trail to D.B. Cooper, which was written by James Lane, you will see and hear very clearly that he is even thinking that the bomb that D.B. Cooper had carried was a dud that was put together because he thought that his father had a very high understanding of the sciences, and he had a chemistry degree, and he would have known how to make a very convincing fake bomb, a very convincing dud. So this is something that I really liked the explanations that were provided. I really liked the answers that were put forward by James Lane in some regards, and in other regards, there was one thing, though, that he did say that I found to be a little bit bothersome, and it might even be a point of disagreement or a point of contention, and that is, going back to the eye color, what he said was that it's not very normal for people to have green or hazel eyes, and I mean, I guess that is somewhat true. Most people I know have either brown eyes or blue eyes or some type of almost even dark black or a very, very dark shade of brown. But yes, people rarely have green or hazel eyes. I agree with that. So he thought that D.B. Cooper was wearing his sunglasses on the plane to conceal his hazel eyes because people wouldn't remember that, or people would remember that too easily. And one thing that I've heard discussed much more frequently in D.B. Cooper circles is that some people believe that D.B. Cooper was wearing the sunglasses on the plane because he wanted to adjust his vision to night vision. It would have been easier for him to see during the jump, which he knew was going to take place in the dark because it's November and he would have been jumping after 8 p.m. So he wanted to adjust his eyesight to the dark so it would be easier for him to jump out. And also, one of the things that I think is very interesting about this story as well is that Fred Milton Lane's mother lived very close to the expected drop zones. And once again, this would be somebody who was jumping over a place that he would have been very familiar with. Maybe you guys will remember the Chael Sonnen episodes when he talks about jumping into his own backyard, and it would have been extremely easy for him to estimate where he was, land where he wanted, and then get to his mother's house, all while saying that he's on a type of elk hunting trip. So I was very intrigued by this, and if you want to read a very short book, then I would recommend The Trail to D.B. Cooper. To be honest, I had just gone through that 400-page Zodiac Killer book, so I was ready for another 400-page book. And I also noticed that there was a very short episode of the Cooper Vortex. It was only 35 minutes long. And I really like long-form content. Even if it's 2 hours or 3 hours, I can start an episode on Monday, and I can listen to 1 hour of it until I'm done, maybe even ending on a Thursday night. Listen to 1 hour each day. But it was a very short episode of the Cooper Vortex at 35 minutes. However, I do think that it was very, very much to the point. And that's really what I tried to do with this episode here. List the major points, list the strong points, as well as just saying that I do think they are strong points, and I think they're worthy of consideration. And I really would just wish we had more photos that were made available in this book, The Trail to D.B. Cooper. But right now I'm going to turn it over to you. What do you think about Fred Milton Lane as a D.B. Cooper suspect? What do you think about any of the observations that I've mentioned in this episode? What do you think about the explanation of the motive for the crimes? What do you think about the uranium and the connections to the mines in Alaska? I would love to know what you guys have to say. Put your ideas in the comment section down below. Anybody can write the show at blackboxonlineradio@AOL.com. You can also get me on Facebook. My personal Facebook name is Ned DeHaan. And there's also blackboxned88 on TikTok and Instagram. And I will see you over there. Until next time.